Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I would discuss series that I've marathoned. And when I say marathon, I mean that I picked up the series and I read all the books in that series without putting it down or without picking up a different series or picking up another book, with one exception. I do have quite a bit of series because I tend to marathon most of my series. So let's jump right in. The first series that I want to discuss, and this is the series that I was talking about, is an exception, and that is Twilight by Stephenie Meyer. I marathoned Twilight, which is book 1, New Moon, which is book 2, and Eclipse, which is book 3. I wasn't able to marathon Breaking Dawn, which is book 4, because it was in the process of being released when I picked up the Twilight series. But I will say, and I can guarantee this, that if Breaking Dawn had been released, I would have picked it up and I would have read it, because I got Breaking Dawn the day it was released and I read it that day, and I believe I read it in like 1 or 2 days. So I know for a fact that if the entire saga had been released, I would have marathoned the entire Twilight series. Next I have Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. This doesn't include The Hobbit. I only marathoned the first 3 books, which is The Fellowship of the Rings, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King. Now, fun fact, I had never read or seen the Lord of the Rings, like read the books or seen the movies, until I was in college, and only because my roommate basically made me watch Lord of the Rings. Well, she didn't make me. She's the one that introduced me to Lord of the Rings. When she learned that I had never read the books or seen the movies, we ended up renting all 3 extended editions of the Lord of the Rings, and we pretty much barricaded ourselves in our dorm room and marathoned all 3 movies. And after that, I was hooked. So of course I went out and read all 3 books. Next I have The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, and my sister actually gave me the set of The Hunger Games for Christmas a few years ago, and I'm so glad she did, because I really love this series. Suzanne Collins is such an amazing writer. I love how they're fast-paced, they're to the point, great character development, the plot is fantastic, and you want to know more, and I really love this series. It consists of book 1, The Hunger Games, book 2, Catching Fire, and book 3, Mockingjay. Next, I have the Leviathan Trilogy by Scott Westerfeld. This is one of my favorite book series. Just thinking about this series makes me want to actually reread it now. But what I love is that this is a historical fiction steampunk. The plot is so unique and it's fantastic. And what I love is that there are drawings all throughout these books, and they are fantastic. The series consists of Leviathan, which is book 1, Behemoth, which is book 2, and Goliath, which is book 3. To give you a quick summary, basically this is a retelling of World War I, and we follow 2 main characters. It is set in 2 different points of views. Alec, who is a prince and he's on the run, and Darren, who is a girl, and both of them are on opposite sides of the war. Darren ends up impersonating a boy to be a soldier in the Air Force. Now Darren and Alec end up crossing paths, and they basically join forces to fight this war. Next I have Across the Universe by Beth Revis, or Revis, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but this is yet another one of my favorite series. So this series consists of book 1, which is Across the Universe, book 2, A Million Suns, and book 3, Shades of Earth. I love this series. It is, once again, really unique. It's a different twist on like sci-fi. It's also set in dual points of view. Amy, an elder. Now Amy is cryogenically frozen with her parents on a ship called Godspeed, and they are going to another planet 300 years in the future to colonize this planet. Elder actually is born on Godspeed, and he is training to be the leader of Godspeed. Now Amy ends up getting unfrozen 50 years too early, so her and Elder have to kind of of figure out what's going on with the secrets and the murders of Godspeed. What I love about this series is that Beth Revis is not afraid to push the boundaries. Important characters die, and this series kind of just like rips your heart out. There's some really sad moments, there's some really happy moments. I love the science fiction and all of the science behind this story. There was a lot of research that went into making this book, especially with like the cryogenically freezing people. So I really appreciated that. And also the plot twist in this series is phenomenal. The next series I have is The Unbecoming of Meyer by Michelle Hodkin. I ended up picking up this series as the third book was getting released, so I was actually able to order the third book while I was reading The Evolution of Meyer. So I was able to go straight into the Retribution of Meyer. I love this series. I ended up reading The Unbecoming of Meyer straight through in one sitting. I read it at night. It really added to that kind of like that creep factor. But basically this series is about a young girl. She's about 16, 17 years old, named Myra. She gets into this tragic accident that kills her boyfriend and her best friend, and she wakes up in the hospital with no recollection of what happened. So her family ends up moving her to, I believe, California, to kind of get her away from like the trauma. But instead Myra ends up basically going crazy. And what I love is that we're in the first person, so we're in Myra's head. We're trusting her to be our narrator, and so what Myra sees, we don't know if she's actually seeing what she's seeing, or if she's hallucinating, or if she is, you know, going through PTSD, or is she just really crazy losing her mind. Next I have the Chesapeake Bay Saga by Nora Roberts. Actually, fun fact, I started with Chesapeake Blue, which is the fourth book in the series, and it's, I think, an add-on. I believe she wanted to make this more a trilogy at first, and then she ended up writing a fourth book. So I read this one first thinking it was a standalone, and I realized it wasn't. Then I went back and read the first book, which is Sea Swept, the second book, Rising Tides, and then the third book, Inner Harbor. This series is basically about three adoptive brothers, and when they are in their mid-20s, something tragic happens and they are left to take care of their fourth adoptive brother, Seth, who is, I want to say he's 10 or 12 at the time they get him. The next series is Legend by Marie Lu. The second book in the series is called Prodigy, and the third book is called Champion. I love this series because it is such a different, unique take on the dystopian type genre. It is, once again, a dual point of view. I tend to really like dual point of views in my series, but it is a dual point of view, and we follow June and Day. They're both 15, 16-year-olds, and Day is a wanted fugitive while June is kind of an employee of the government. And I don't want to say too much because the storyline is so unique. I really don't want to spoil anything, but I love the way the government works in this series, and I really like both June and Day's characters. I liked the plot twist, and my favorite thing is I really love the ending of this trilogy. The next series I marathoned is Delirium by Lauren Kate. This is yet another trilogy. I have a lot of trilogies as well, apparently, but it consists of Delirium, which is book 1, Pandemonium, which is book 2, and Requiem, which is book 3. Now, I loved Delirium. I thought it was a very interesting, once again, dystopian type. In this society, love is illegal, and when you get to be a certain age, I believe it's like 17 or 18, maybe even 16, but when you get to be a certain age, you go through a procedure which it reminds me a lot of like a lobotomy, and they basically keeps you from having the emotion to love. So the plot right there just kind of really drew me in. As I said, I loved Delirium, and the ending of Delirium, just, you have to jump into Pandemonium because you want to know what happens next. I did enjoy Pandemonium, not as much as Delirium, but I thought it was a pretty solid sequel. But then we got to Requiem. I enjoyed parts of Requiem, but I didn't like the ending. I didn't like the characters. I felt like all the characters were just so much more annoying in Requiem, and I felt like there were a lot of plot holes and things just didn't make sense and didn't add up, and they weren't very realistic. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. The next series I have is Enclave by Anne Aguirre. It consists of 3 books: Enclave, Outpost, and Horde. I don't hear too much about this series, and I actually don't think I talk about it much on my channel, but I really did enjoy this series a lot. Enough for me to marathon and just go straight through the entire series. I really liked Enclave. I thought it was, like I said, another interesting take, and it's not just this one is dystopian. It kind of is, but I would say it's more, has a little bit of sci-fi element. But basically, this society lives underground. We follow our main character, Deuce, and she has been training all her life to be like a warrior, to defend like the gates of their, like, where they live. But something happens, and I don't want to go too much into it because I really don't want to spoil, but I really like this series. And the last series I want to talk about is the Dollanganger Saga by V.C. Andrews. This series deals with really mature topics. It deals with like incest, and it deals with suicide and like mental disorders. It's an amazing series, but it is more mature and definitely adult book, and it's considered gothic. But it consists of One Flowers in the Attic, Book 2, Petals on the Wind, Book 3, If There Be Thorns, and Book 4, Seas of Yesterday. But basically, this story starts out with 4 young kids, and their father dies, so their mother takes them to their grandparents' house to live. Now, their grandfather cannot know that they exist, so they are basically hidden in the attic for, I want to say, 2 or 3 years, and they never leave the attic. Think how scary and horrific that would be. This series has a lot of tragedy. There aren't many happy moments. So if you're looking for a happy, lighthearted read, this is definitely not the series to pick up. But if you're okay with mature content, then I do highly recommend picking it up. Alright guys, well that is it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Comment down below and let me know some of the series that you've marathon, and if you happen to marathon any of the series that I did. I hope you all have a great rest of the day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!